nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good.
Okay.
Can you give me
You first of all, you already exposed yourself as homophobic off of that argument. Second of all, you already lost half the room with that retort, because that's not even the fact of the matter. But again, it's always like tell, not show. Like, why are you giving us information that we didn't even ask for?
another
First 15 minutes. But
Nationalism is
We
better.
should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. Hi, I'm Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, and today I am surrounded by 20 conservatives.
20 conservatives. Collective IQ of less than 20.
My first claim is Trump's attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
Trump's attacks on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
All right.
Oops.
Sorry, Sam.
No worries.
All right. I think I have a slight issue with the back end of the premise. I guess Trump's attacks on DEI being a real goal to, give corporations more power. I'd rather center the conversation around the Democratic, especially as conservatives, the issues that people have with DEI and why I believe Trump would, want to support the issues that, people are voting for him for.
I mean, I'm talking about his whole
Right.
attack on DEI. It's actually DEIA,
Sure.
right? You know that.
Right.
In
What does the A
government
stand
agencies.
for?
The A being for accessibility.
Right. Yeah, and I think the attack on DEI.
That's like one thing that I feel like a lot of Trumpies that hate DEI forget about. Like, we're not just being inclusive on. Oh, what the fuck? I'm like over the mic. We're not just being inclusive on your skin color or where you came from. It's also the fact that you may have a physical handicap or a physical disability, but you can still get your job done. But you need a ramp because you're wheelchair bound. But that shouldn't just because you're wheelchair bound, it shouldn't prevent you from working in government. There are jobs for people in government who have a physical disability. And a lot of the times when there are attacks on ethnic groups or minority groups, that also includes the disabled.
Yeah.
Because they're normally viewed as like gross, icky by fascists, as like people that also need to get out of be removed from the gene pool.
Isn't an attack on people's protections. It's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Wanting to end DEI doesn't want to end protections for someone being disabled, someone being, inaccessible to get into a job. It rather wants to de-incentivize corporations to push them to hire these people on unfair bases, right?
Okay, but DEIA
Right.
is not about quotas or anything like that. It is about protections for people within these organizations, or to make sure that you have different communities that
Right.
have the opportunity to apply to these things.
Right.
So it can mean, within government agencies, it means things like, let's pay interns so that not only wealthy people can have their kids do internships in these agencies.
Right.
Or let's put out notices around different parts of town,
Sure.
metaphorically speaking, so that people know this job exists.
Right. This is where it begins, but this isn't the ultimate goal that conservatives have an issue with. Conservatives don't have an issue with trying to spread job applications to poorer communities.
Yes, they do.
Well, then
everyone
why
gets-
rescind DEIA
the
requirements in
problem
government agencies?
Exactly, because if there were no DEI requirements, they would not be offering these jobs to people who they would not normally be forced to by these requirements. DEI is not, oh, you have to hire a black person because they're black. DEI is, oh, if you're going to offer this white guy who has the exact same resume, this job position, and you have another black applicant, you can't only always look at the white applicants. That you're specifically leaving out a specific racial group, and that violates the Civil Rights Act.
Because
At least I'm talking about in federal government. Private businesses are an entirely separate thing.
problem with DEIA is
And that's the distinction between Sam's point. Sam's point is about DEI in government, not the DEI. And like when Trump signed the executive order to end DEI, that when all these other companies started rolling back their DEI policies, those two things just happened around the same time. It wasn't that the companies did it because Trump ordered it. They did it because of the messaging that it sent, but it wasn't like because of if they didn't do it, they would be in violation of something.
there may not be like perceived actual
just
number
trying
quotas,
them,
but that's
marketing
what
to
it
whatever's
devolves into,
popular
and
at the current
especially with
moment.
Do you
corporations,
have
it devolves.
evidence of that?
I mean, sure, we can
My
look
chicken
at
wings are here.
corporations that are government agencies that are hiring people on not true proper bases. We can even look
Well,
at.
I mean,
we can even look at
would you
the
have any
DNC's.
evidence that that's happening?
Yeah, even the DNC's nomination of Kamala as president this year, there was no reason to nominate Kamala as she wasn't democratically selected. She wasn't. She didn't go through a single primary.
Well,
None
wait
of
a
these
second.
things.
So you're saying that Kamala was the vice president of the United States after
Yes.
the president drops out 2 months before the convention. You think that's a DEI
She wasn't
hire?
Every presidential nominee is democratically selected to be the nominee for that
Do
party,
you realize
except
there were
for
not
Kamala
even
Harris.
primaries prior to 1972
Well,
in
sure,
the
but
Democratic
this
Party?
this isn't before 1972.
Well, I understand, but what did
This
you
is,
think
know.
you were going to run primaries in those 2 months?
Well,
I mean,
sure,
Joe Biden should have dropped out
But even
3 years
even
ago, as far as I'm
before,
concerned.
well, sure, but even before when Kamala was running in primaries, she didn't. She
Okay.
wasn't the next man up. There, none of this. She wasn't the next person
She
up.
was the vice
I
president.
Right,
Yes.
of course, but
Yeah,
she wasn't
that
in
tiny
primaries.
detail. But
Right,
listen,
well,
aside from, I would have might have wanted a different
Absolutely.
candidate as well. But that has nothing to do with Trump rescinding orders that basically say you need to search for a wide range of candidates, not necessarily give any different benefits, but you need to make sure different communities have access to the awareness of this job. You need.
Yeah, that was the
you
point I
need
was
in
making.
your office accessibility for people who have physical handicaps.
Sure.
And it's
If
not
you
just also
have,
physical, like the mobility
folks
handicaps. It's
who
also like
identify
having
as,
Braille as an
as
option, like in the
trans.
elevators.
You need
having,
to make it at least hospitable
certain
and
things.
not.
And it's not also
this
just
is
for
all
employees. It's also for people who use
non-discriminatory
government
stuff.
facilities. Like
That's
that's
what this
the
is
DMV,
all
You're
for
about.
cherry
example,
picking the
having,
portions of DEI
different
that
languages
even
available.
conservatives don't have issue.
Or because
Conservatives
we
don't
don't
have
just have
issues
people that
with
speak
making
English in
workplaces.
this
The
country
whole
that drive.
DEI
Yes.
apparatus within our
is-
government
okay.
was a function of doing exactly
It
what I
is-
said, had nothing to do with quotas
It
or
is
even
unfortunate
affirmative
that
action.
those things get taken out, and there might not have been specific
What else
numerical
was he trying
quotas.
to take out with
It's trying to take out people getting jobs that don't deserve those jobs. People getting pushed into
There is
positions
no
they have
evidence.
no qualification.
There is no evidence of what you just said happening in these government agencies.
That's not true at all. I mean, we're not allowed to sit here and have notes and numbers to pull up for you. You can't,
Give me
you know,
one example.
You can't ask me to pull up numbers when I'm not, I'm not able to sit here and look on a computer for you, but these are the
How would you
problems
know?
that
Then you decided, why did you come up to talk to someone without having any statistical evidence or any? You don't need to come in and be like, well, 54% said no. But you can come with some point of reference without making just a wild claim.
conservatives.
Sorry, you've been voted out. Please return to your
Vote
seat.
it out. Get your ass out of here with your shitty arguments. No, don't give him applause. Ooh. My favorite, the black conservative.
See ya.
Okay, so
And he's going to talk about DEI.
I think the roots issue with DEI isn't what the previous gentleman was trying to point. Conservatives aren't necessarily have issues with those things like accessibility to people who might need.
Hairline check. What's that mustache? It's giving plumber.
Help. The issue is, and I kind of
You look like a Carl.
referred to this before, when you have agencies and systems, what tends to happen
Nah,
when you
he
have
need a
government overreach, big government, is
straight
that
edge.
agencies and systems get
You can-
abused.
you can see a little
and
hair
I think
sticking out.
unequivocally, DEI was heavily abused in practice. It was great in theory. It's idealistic, which is sure, sure is fine, that a lot of people can get behind, but it was abused in a lot of ways. When you have
He's
actors,
moisturized.
like we're in California right now, when you have actors, white male actors who are being told, we do not want white men, we're not gonna cast any white men, we only want this particular
Dulce Sisto, don't you fucking lie. Don't you lie. Post your hairline then.
kind of gender, race, right? That is an abuse of a system. It's no longer fair, but more about just perpetuating one aspect of, visual compelling aspects, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is
his
companies are
argument
going to say,
that
well, we want
because
to look
they're not
the
offering
most diverse.
looking for
And
white male
what that
leads,
is, it's
that-
moral
that's because of
grandstanding. It's like
DEI.
because we have more black women,
Or
we're
could it be
better,
because we're
we sell
telling
better
stories
soda.
that don't
Like
involve
that,
I got
having
you.
a
that
white
is not,
male as
Well,
the lead.
that's getting a little far afield from what Trump's DEI orders are. But I can tell you, as somebody who was a sitcom actor in the 90s, I would walk into a room and everybody I would see would look like me. And I was doing a second position, which doesn't even exist anymore, where you do 2 pilots a year. And I was looking around basically every part of television when I was a kid. I was centered in some fashion. It was either this is about my mother, or this is about my father, or someone like me was centered. So, we can argue as to whether or not Hollywood is overcorrected in some fashion. But on a governmental level, the DEIA directives that agencies were following for the past 4 years, there's nothing, I don't know what you mean by abuse on it, but there is no evidence that it was an affirmative action program in those instances. It was about anti-discrimination. You cannot discriminate against these people, and you want to open up opportunities for a broad swath of people. Again, the internship is like one of the most material things that exist there, where the idea that you need to pay interns. And that's important because you want low-income people to have the same sort of like opportunities to see these things as wealthy people. My kids can maybe afford to do an internship for the summer instead of going to get a job. I
think what's happening is we're talking about 2 different things.
Well, but I'm talking about Trump's DEIA rescission is a way of basically driving people out of these agencies, making it
you're saying Trump specifically, and I understand why you're saying Trump, but I think the American people as a whole have kind of, and I won't say whole because obviously it's not 100%, but a majority of the American people have kind of rejected DEI because, again,
I don't think a majority of Americans know what DEIA is.
That may be the case, but again, my point is we're talking about abuse of a system. What you're talking about is not necessarily what was happening. What people were seeing were, hey, because you're white, you can't do this. And liberals like to do this thing where they create systems, and then they created the whole idea of woke, and then they backed away, and then conservatives say woke, and then they're like, well, we don't know what woke is. They created DEI. Biden literally said, Kamala Harris is being chosen because she is a black woman, and then all of a sudden, Democrats for the rest after that said that's not why she was chosen, even though Biden literally said that. And then we have this cognitive dissonance as if we're not living in reality.
Biden wanted to make sure that there was that there was an opportunity for a black woman to be his vice president.
Yes, but so why did Democrats move away from that and say no, it wasn't because she was a black woman?
I don't know what Democrats.
My point is
it's not because she's a black woman.
But that's what they said. I can agree that it's not because she's a black woman, but that's what they said. Why did they say that then?
No, because there are plenty of black women, right? Like, he could have picked anybody, but he picked specifically her. You're positing the idea that there wasn't a black woman who would have been qualified for that position.
No,
and I don't believe that.
No, that's not what conservatives aren't saying, that there aren't, because again, and even in the Republican Party right now, and in Trump's cabinet, there are people of color that Democrats pretend don't exist, like J.D. Vance's wife, and
J.D. Vance's wife is not in the cabinet.
No, but if J.D. Vance was a Democrat, his wife would be lauded all over everything because of her skin.
I'm not here to defend the Democrats' choice on every policy, but there is one party in this country that is identitarian. There is one party that is represented and it is homogenous, and it is the Republican Party. 85% of Republicans are white. And that's just the reality of it.
So does that
Some
mean
people
that?
don't necessarily have a problem with that.
But here's the thing. You said even if let's just say, okay, that's true. 80% of Republicans are white. Does that mean that they're less moral? That they can't run an effective government? What does race have to do? What does race have to do? Hold on. What does
Donald
race?
Trump didn't have to say my vice president's going to be a white male.
No.
Because they all knew it was going to be.
No, this is the premise of DEI. What does race have to do with running an effective government? What does race have to do?
Because this is just like so simple, right? You are not likely to consider issues or care about issues you don't personally experience or know of personally. So if you are a white person who is coddled their entire lives, mommy and daddy took care of everything. Probably had paid tutoring or something like that. You didn't have to work a job to get through school. You're not going to have your life is going to be so drastically different than someone who grew up in an apartment building in one of the boroughs in New York City, who takes a train to school every day, who has to get summer jobs, whose parents may be on some form of assistance. Like you're not gonna have, if you don't have the same struggle or know of, or be self-aware enough to know of stories that exist that you don't personally see, and especially in government. Like, first of all, whoever's in government really doesn't give a fuck to begin with. And the small people that they do give a fuck about are the people that are just like them, more rich people. That's it. What DEI is supposed to do, or DEIA is supposed to do, is just open up more opportunities for people who don't look like the majority of people who are in positions of power, because the people that are in positions of power are only helping people that are, like I said, just like them.
Say DEI on the micro level.
I will tell you right now.
DEI on the micro level at McDonald's.
I'll tell you.
Am I gonna get better nuggets?
I'll ask you a question.
If the cashier is black or white, what does that have to do with anything?
I'll tell you what it is. First of all, DEIA means that if you come into this agency or corporation, you're not going to be discriminated against because you don't look like everybody else, or you don't have the same physical abilities as everybody else, or you may require.
Like, that's the shit that kills me about the black conservatives. Did y'all skip over the entire chapter where they said no blacks allowed? Like, that group is the same group of people that you're trying to align yourself with.
Handles on the bathroom or whatever it is.
They want to go back to
That's what DEIA does. But does it make a government better if there's a broad representation of the people it's supposed to govern? Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Regardless of DEI, don't we already have things in our Constitution that protect people's rights, protects people?
No.
We don't?
No.
Do we or do we not?
No, we do not. Tell me what protects people from discrimination in housing and in work and hiring or getting loans. It's all statutes. It's all statutes. And in these government agencies, there was nothing except for that order. That's why Trump just rescinded it.
I'm gonna tap out because I think someone else has a better
pussy
can defend that point specifically better than me.
All right, please return to your seat.
What is that? Lil Wayne? Who was that? Who was that in the red?
Specifically better than me.
All right.
Is that Lil Wayne? Who that? Who are you? Who was this nigga? And why is he wearing a dog collar? Is he a conservative? Is he supposed to be a conservative?
Please return to your
I can't
seat.
wait to get to his argument. Ooh, I cannot wait to hear what he has to say.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Not the man
Okay.
bun.
When it
First
comes
of
to
all,
DEI,
how the fuck is this supposed to be a room full of conservatives and they all look like that? Michael over here looks like he should be serving me a venti soy latte at Starbucks for $9 that I eventually drink when it's cold.
essentially, if a person
The dude before
was
looked
not
like a
racist,
plumber.
he would hire someone regardless, right? So why would we need a policy to protect a person if we've, right?
Wait, let me get
So
back to
if a
this.
person was not racist, he would hire someone regardless, right? So why would we need a policy to protect a person if we've moved past racism?
Who said we moved past racism? Who said that? Huh?
So would you consider yourself racist?
Wait, are you suggesting that we've moved past?
Crazy follow-up question. Bro threw a flashbang and then a smoke grenade. What the
Racism?
fuck?
Would you consider yourself racist?
I consider myself, and
Bro.
sometimes I think we all practice like some form of, white supremacy. I think actually like we all do to some degree.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that. So I guess going to the
don't know why
LGBT topic,
conservatives
it
have
seems
the
like it's
IQ
very
of a
prevalent
crouton.
for you as an issue.
I think that's
Well,
a
it
hot
seems
tones.
like a big issue. I mean, the Republican Party spent literally hundreds of millions of dollars demonizing trans people.
Well, the reason why they've done something like that, and I think you're misconstruing the narrative, they haven't demonized them. They simply want protections back for their own children, because children are being stripped away from
Who's
their
their
parents.
own children?
have to
Wait,
protect the children.
Children are being stripped away from their parents?
Yes, due to AB 954, they've now included gender identity as a premise to remove and strip parental rights for children who maybe they are rejecting their gender ideology.
So, but you'd be okay with parents who agree with their children's doctors to provide gender-affirming care?
I do not agree with that. Do you?
I do.
I believe that parents
yeah.
and
Have the
doctors
right
can make those
and the
decisions.
decisions for their child, yeah.
With the kids,
If
of
a
course.
child can't smoke, drink, or have sex before the age of 18, they should not be able to consent to a sex change. Now, in
Well,
terms of a
I don't know that
DEI
they can,
initiative, the reason why there's
I love how
military
they
bans
just,
on
they just
trans
jump to,
women.
and that's the thing. Like, okay, that's another thing. And I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. Gender affirming care is not just they cut your wee off, they split it down the middle like a banana, turn it to a vagina, and then they somehow do the opposite, the other way around. That's the very final step of a multi-step, very long process of gender affirming care. Gender affirming care simply starts at could be hormone blockers to prevent you from developing before puberty. It could be something as simple as acknowledging someone by their preferred pronouns. Who the fuck cares what pronouns they call themselves? I don't give a shit. It has nothing to do with me. Attacking them for them having, them wanting to have their identities respected, I don't think is a productive use of government resources. And I don't think it is worth taking a chainsaw to the government itself on the basis of wokeness, that we're going to slash wokeness because there are a few, like the number of trans people in this country, I think is less than 1% of the United States population. I could be wildly wrong. Mines are he, him. Amount of trans people in U.S. 1 point less than almost half a full percentage point. Ages 13 and older identify as transgender. I just want cheap eggs.
And
I
trans
just want
men
cheap
is
eggs,
because
please.
they do not have the ability to cooperate at a
But again, also, they are not doing sex reassignment surgery on children under the age of 18.
mental capacity when they're constantly undergoing hormone treatment, as well as depression pills, as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to combat, do you really think you're going to bring an ice cooler pack?
And again, I keep pausing, and I apologize if it's a bit confusing, but he keeps bouncing back and forth. The initial point of the argument was Trump's attacks on DEI are actually a smoke and mirror because he actually just wants to give corporations more power, right? This dude's argument off rip was, are you racist? And then now we have immediately pivoted to trans kids getting sex reassignment surgery, and now we're talking about trans in the military.
Back with your, whether that be hormone,
why he
estrogen,
already
or
has
whatever it
six
may be,
red flags.
while
It's a
you're
walking red
about to
flag.
shoot someone of the opposing
Well,
war.
the executive orders that Trump gave were DEIA orders that had to do with agencies that have nothing to do with the military.
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do.
The FDA, they just revoked the ability of the Air Force to teach Air Force members about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well,
Like,
we're not-
what are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
Honestly, like they're rewriting history.
well, that's your perspective, right? But at the end of the day, if a person
Tuskegee Airmen, we can all agree, existed, right?
Just listen to this. If you were racist, right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would. I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts. For the end of the year, when you create your tax returns, they give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is black or a person of color.
No, they don't.
I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
In government
businesses.
agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people of
And the other
color.
thing I
This
wanted
is
to,
to
and I,
protect
the other
people
thing I
from
want to
discrimination.
Hold on. How would government agencies get a tax break when the government is funded by taxes? They don't pay taxes. They are paid by taxes.
The other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals is that you guys push for example, for DEI and people of Latino
real.
or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times
Kylo's
what you
left
don't
nut
realize is you're actually doing
fucking
more
smarter than this
harm
nigga.
than good by putting them in positions where you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on
DEIA does not is not.
It's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color,
No,
physical
it
attributes.
says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination
Discrimination against what?
against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different.
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit. And that is the emphasis
People
here.
get hired as a merit, but if the
Not
DEI,
if you get a
if the
tax
DEIA, I'm talking about Trump's rescission of
If
these
you
orders
received a
on
tax
these
cut as
agencies.
an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
If you could pay them less?
listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
Yes,
these are.
they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
Every
parts
private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't
Someone
pay
please raise the
taxes.
11th flag. Get this nigga out
Government
of here.
agencies
Get this nigga outta
operate
here.
are funded by the government.
That is not true.
Bro, I can
That is
argue
not true.
better than these
And you know
fucking
what?
conservatives. Please.
I think the whole
Yo, look at this nigga's face. Yo, look at Sam's face. He's like, do you see this fucking moron?
juxtapose of this entire conversation.
What month is this?
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on
Glad
that.
we agree on that.
The FDA
Dumbass.
does not pay taxes.
Them wings was
It
busted.
does not get a tax cut because it doesn't pay taxes. DEIA
Goes out this.
forces them as an agency to say if you have a job opening, you must do your best efforts to make sure that every
I like that. I
part
love
of
me a
society.
buzzword. You must do your best
I
effort.
love hearing a
I love that
buzzword.
buzzword.
Okay,
Because you
pause.
feel
What
like
is the
you have to.
buzzword,
You're
bro?
pressured
The
to.
buzzword is
Yes.
must.
You shouldn't be pressured to hire
Must
someone based
or
on skin
must?
color.
No, not to hire someone on skin color,
done.
but
He's
put
done.
up
Get him outta here.
notice
Get him outta here.
about
Get him the
what,
fuck outta here.
that the job exists. Make sure that you put it in different communities so that you have as wide an application pool as possible.
And therefore you get
All
tax
right.
cuts.
All right, return
At
to
the
your
You're done,
end
seat.
of
buddy.
the year when you
You're
file
done.
taxes, you
Get
get a
him
tax cut
out.
for hiring
He's
someone
pissing
who
me
speaks
off.
a different
Return to your
language or
seat.
different skin color.
I don't know how to respond to that.
Why are you applauding him?
How you doing?
So, I want a little bit more
Not even a
clarification
hi?
because I
Fuck
don't
you.
even know if we got
Fuck
it
you,
yet.
Ben.
On
Say hi back
which
to Sam.
Part benefits corporations, like from your
Okay,
perspective.
so
my wings.
agencies, the U.S. government agencies, the
wait, I
vast
wanna hear this
majority of
argument
them,
first. Hold on.
what they function to do
He didn't
is
even wanna be
inhibit
right. He just wanted the last word.
corporations from
lost a
essentially
long time ago.
externalizing their costs onto society.
Sure.
So the example would be, I used it before, but it's a good one. I'm making Teflon, C8, for instance, okay? And C8 is supposed to be burned because instead of like deposited, because it's a forever chemical. And I can go out and instead of burning it, it's too expensive to burn it, I'm going to dump it into a river. And the EPA comes in and says, like, you can't do that. We're going to fine you. You're not allowed to do this. But what the company is doing when they do that is they're going to take the profits that come with lowering their costs by dumping it into the river. And those costs are then borne by everybody who lives around that river. They're going to get cancer. They're going to get gastrointestinal problems, whatever it is. And society bears the cost of that.
Can you connect the dots for me, though? Because it sounds like we're talking about something completely different.
And so the DEIA stuff is just the beginning of demoralizing these agencies and trying to wreck them from the inside. It's all part of like Russell Vought's thing, the OMB, the whole Schedule F, where they get rid of civil servants and they demoralize people and they don't want them to be able to function.
So then would you agree if this is about demoralizing? I mean, over 75 million people voted for Trump, right? He won the popular vote. Do you not think that in part, you even said yourself that Americans don't really know what DEIA is, according to your definition of it?
Well, the government's definition of it.
Okay, well, I would argue that the average American is demoralized by what they've seen, the way that the government goes about their DEI policies and the military and other organizations, not just the military.
Please return to your seat.
Okay.
Oh, new topic? Is this a new topic?
Hey,
Please.
Before we go any further in this video, I'm in a time and not even report with straight and tablet description to check journalists again to.
Next claim is, unless you're a billionaire, a religious fundamentalist, or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake.
Ooh, they are triggered by this question. I know they are fucking triggered by this question. Ooh.
Okay.
Oh, come on.
So let's tackle
no, not this
one
nigga
aspect,
again.
Religious fundamentalists. What benefit would
Mike!
religious fundamentalists get? And also, can you define what is a religious fundamentalist?
And maybe you could.
In our glorious country of America, the religion of Christianity has a sect called Christian fundamentalism, which believes that Christianity should rule the nation. All laws should be in accordance to the Christian fundamentalist Bible. All aspects of government should be at the behest of the church. And voting for somebody who wants to dismantle the government provides a leeway or a vacuum in which the church can then go in and say, well, we are the saviors. We come bearing the word of God. We are anointed. We have received the mandate from heaven. We are now here to rebirth America.
Say more of like a Christian nationalist.
Okay.
So Christian nationalism, the best way to think about it is Handmaid's Tale.
In this instance. But things like, the attacks on trans folks, the attacks on a woman's right to choose, the idea that we're going to get stuff like an enhanced RFRA, which is going to mean that if you're a pharmacist and you don't want to provide birth control, you may not have to.
Don't you think you're assuming that
if you believe that public education, we should take that money and pour it into religious schools, you're gonna get a benefit out of a Trump administration.
Yeah, but don't you think you're assuming that the vast majority of Americans who are moderates?
What do you think you're gonna get out of the Trump administration?
Economic relief. That was
what kind of economic relief? They're going to cut Social Security. You're going to have to pay for your parents. They're going to cut when they go after the agencies like they're going after, right? This is outlined in Project 2025. Russ Vought, who's going to be the OMB head, he was the OMB head the first time around. He wrote all the book on this stuff.
Okay, well, you bring up Project 2025.
When you cut agencies and go after them, and you fire all the inspector generals so that they're not being able to make sure that the agencies are working, who do you think profits from that? It's corporations. They're going to go after agencies that make sure your food is not full of botulism, that your air is not full of mercury, that your water is not full of C8. This is what they're going to do. Agencies exist to curb corporations from externalizing their costs and privatizing their profits. So it may be cheaper for a company to dump their chemicals into a river than it is for them to dispose of it in a safe way. And so they get the profits from that, but the costs are borne by society. They're borne by society in the form of like people get cancer. They're borne by society in terms of like we've got to do the cleanup. That's what agencies do.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
It's good.
Mike, if I see your ass one more time with them green socks. No, you. Pony, man bun nigga, you need to sit your ass down.
I would
You're not
like
allowed to
to
argue
touch
anymore.
on the religious fundamentalist
Let's go.
aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really
he
more,
looked like
I
he
guess
would call
it's
Amigo on his
really
neighbors.
theocrats,
Okay.
is that they want to
He's like,
impose
it's
their
not me, them.
morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't.
But morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference.
What's
So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist, utilitarian.
We
don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of philosophical
bother
labels,
myself
bro.
with being a consequentialist or a
Okay.
utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to
Even
a
though
preference. So if you say that
utilitarian
killing
is a
is wrong and I say
form
it's
of
right, you would really have no
consequentialism.
contention with that.
We're not going to get into
Well,
that.
no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society.
Okay.
We have laws that we have decided
Yeah, we
as a
operate as a
society
country.
in a
Yes. Even
democratic
though,
way.
you know,
And
the
for
country was
some
founded
people,
by
it's
people
okay
who
for it
had
to be informed by
stout
their
religious
religion. That's
views.
okay.
Okay, perfect. So if
Part of
tomorrow
those religious
society comes
views
together and we
included
say, hey,
enslaving black
trans
people.
folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
But for the most part, we try to keep
I would
the separation
be
of church
against
and
it,
state.
but I mean, it
I
would
think that's
be-
in
It would
either
be
the
morally right
Constitution or
under your
Declaration
Not
of Independence.
morally right. No, I'm not
Okay.
talking about morals
Okay,
here.
so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off
I
of.
believe you can have an ethical
Okay,
framework without religion.
and if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so two men to
He's about to get in. I know where he's going. He's about to get into the argument saying, oh, because of the wokeness, we allow, and the rise of the gay men, that birth rates are low. This not again, this is the shit that kind of pisses me off too. Not attributing the fact that most of the people saying that they're not having children are not having children because it is too damn expensive. And having children is a lifelong commitment. These religious fundamentalists want you to just pop babies out like they're motherfucking Tic Tacs, like we're all just rabbits fucking and producing 17 children, like it's motherfucking John and Kate plus 8. And that should not be how life is dictated, and it shouldn't be dictated by people who are dressed like this. I'm sorry.
together
Button your fucking undershirt.
can't reproduce unless they have to take
too-
from a
you're
healthy
too
straight
lax
couple.
for me.
Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good.
Okay.
Can you give me
You first of all, you already exposed yourself as homophobic off of that argument. Second of all, you already lost half the room with that retort, because that's not even the fact of the matter. But again, it's always like tell, not show. Like, why are you giving us information that we didn't even ask for?
another justification for it?
Again, the point of, and this is also the shit that fucking pisses me off about arguing with Trumpies, because I experienced this myself. The jumping around between topics. Stay on topic. And you know what the topic is, and you're intentionally jumping around because you have already lost. And again, when you engaging in a conversation with a Trumpie, it's not necessarily to win. They're never going to concede. Them conceding and saying, you know what, your point made me realize that I should start questioning my own personal beliefs a little bit more. That is a victory.
Well, I think maybe that's
But that is like you're better off standing outside and praying to get struck by
the way
lightning.
they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
Yeah.
They may be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should we let a pedophile off the hook since
Oh my God, what are these arguments? I'm gonna have a stroke.
they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society is
Should
decided-
implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than.
Okay,
than
so you're okay
preying
with
on
a
children.
45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well?
Oh,
Incest.
for an hour already. Nice.
No,
If they consent, you're okay with that?
no, I think society has also determined that it's like, it's not beneficial.
Right, there's
for-
duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't
Not
about
all
freedom
religion.
and
I can-
exercising what you want.
I mean,
Because then
well,
you also-
want to
the
impose
fact
your
of the matter-
religious
the debate
doctrine
No,
boils
on me,
down
because
to
and I
you just
don't want
admitted,
that.
you just
Should be
admitted we
listened to
need
the
duties.
most.
We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your
So let's say let's run this course of logic through. Leftists want a clean planet. They want clean drinking water, and they want clean air because it feels good. They want the planet to stop burning down. They want the planes to stop falling out of the motherfucking sky. That's not even a leftist point. That's just something that happened recently. Leftists want fair taxation so that everyone is covered. There can be less. What's the word I'm looking for? Less widening of the income gap, less stealing of money from upper classes, the 1%, the 0.1%, and the 0.01%. Leftists want renewable energy. That all because that feels good, or all because that makes life more fair? Why is it that religious fundamentalism is always tied to cruelty? That's my question. I should ask them that.
What's my argument as to why I don't want
You have no
your
contention.
religion to? Well, because first of all, I don't think that you have the right to corner what God is telling us is right or wrong. And there are differences between religions. And so my argument is, like, you're not going to keep halal or kosher, right? I mean, I don't believe that someone has a corner on religious truth. And the reason why we have a democracy is because we didn't want a king. And the kings came from the idea that their God said that they're the ones who's supposed to be king. And so we can disagree on this. I don't want to live in a country that is ruled by religious fundamentalism.
And if I do, you have no issue with that.
And no. And this is why I say, under Trump.
See, now he already lost.
Yes,
Now he's arguing
you
from a
have
point
won.
of being hurt. Just
You
give up.
have a
Only
bunch
male
of
and
Christian.
female. You're right.
You have a
You
Christian
won.
nationalist,
Yes,
and
which is necessary.
And so I concede the point that under Trump, your Christian nationalism has gained an advantage
Yes.
under this.
Sorry, we're going
And
to have
so
more kids. We're going to have less abortions. We're going to have more family. We're going to have stable family households. Sorry about.
See, now the conversation is devolving into not what topic of the conversation was.
Better
Trans
education.
people, gay people should be
They
outlawed.
should be straight.
No,
They should be
they
straight.
should be
Women should
straight.
be
So we're gonna
secondary
bring
to
back
their husbands.
conversion
Women
therapy.
should submit
Right?
to the husbands.
Women
That doesn't
should
mean
submit to
that
the
doesn't mean they are
husbands.
slaves.
Right,
It doesn't mean they are
I
slaves. It means
understand.
they are
I
protected.
understand. You
Okay,
got a
let me ask you
hierarchy.
then. Let me ask you.
No.
Should
I
women
want
be
you-
drafted?
listen,
Should women be
listen,
drafted?
Listen,
Ye-
I
yes.
think
If they're equal, should they be drafted?
I think this is
Sure.
the vision that you have,
no
and I
problem
think
with
Trump
that. Why-
supports
what-
it.
what
I
is
think
that
the
argument?
Christian nationalists he has
What is that
throughout his
argument?
government
Should women be
are all
drafted?
going to work towards your vision.
Yes.
And my hope is that when people look at this, they say, hey, wait a second. I don't want my life to be dictated by the notion
dick.
of a Christian nationalist prescription. Now, you may win out. I mean, certainly, like if you look at a country like Iran, they have a theocracy there, and that. And it,
Yeah, why don't Christian
apparently that's,
fundamentalists ever bring up like
good for
actual
them,
theocracies?
if they want it.
My final point
they're very
is
quick to
whenever-
shit
I
on
don't wanna live in a
My final point is
Iranians
whenever
for,
we see
you know,
people live out Christian
believing and
values to its
instituting
full
the same things
extent,
that Christian
we see a great
fundamentalists believe,
society.
but because they're
When we see
brown
people
and
deviate from
speak
that,
a
that's
funny
where all the problems
language,
arise.
All right,
I
pause.
think you are
They're
at home in the Trump
different. He's
trial.
Thank you very much.
You've been voted out. Please return to your
Get this
seat.
Diego out of here with his Argyle socks. Mike, if I see your ass get up, oh my God, it's the same people. Come on.
I think I have an issue with the implications of the prompt. I mean, of course, I'll stick on the religious fundamentalism. I think it's unfair to view Christianity separated from the ideology that Christianity informs, right? You have an ideology that you vote upon because you view it to be the truth that benefits
very
everyone
squishy.
in a society. That's how a democracy works. I, as a Christian, have an ideology that informs my opinions, and I believe that it is the most moral and correct way for a society to function. So I think if we put religious fundamentalism in a box where you say any moral implications that I draw from this, religion
Nope, that's not what we're
is
saying.
unable
You
to be
can't
voted
say you
upon,
can't take
unable to
any,
be pushed onto you because simply it's a
inspiration
religion
or
is
moral
unfair to view it that
inspiration.
way.
And this is so funny that I'm
Religion is
watching
an
this 'cause I'm about to
ideology
do a
like
whole
all
video
ideologies are.
about morality
you
in anime.
You vote away.
I
But
don't
you
mind
cannot
you-
say, no one is making the argument that you cannot be inspired by religion to come up with a moral foundation for your society. That's where most of our morals come from. The problem becomes is when you say we are only picking from one box, and that box says Christianity on it. We are not taking anything else from any other religion because this is a Christian nation and it always has been. I'm sorry, when was it a Christian nation? Was it a Christian nation when the slaves outnumbered the slave owners? Because not all the slaves believed in Christianity. Was it a Christian nation when the North and the South was duking it out? I don't know.
I don't dispute the idea that you could have a
Was it a Christian nation before the settlers showed up? Who was here? Was it the Christians? I don't know.
religious ideology and want to see it imposed upon others, and it's not inconsistent with my claim. My claim is that Donald Trump is ushering in an element of Christian theocracy that I can't remember his name, Elijah, and you may be excited about, but I'm not excited about it. I don't think the vast majority of Americans are, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't think this country was set up to be a theocracy, and I find it problematic that it will be, but others will be happy about it.
I think it's unfair as well to label any morals that comes from religion inherently immediately theocratic. Like having a theocracy.
No one, again, is making that argument. The argument is a theocracy is when it's only ruled by religion and only ruled by one religion.
Theocracy is something different than having.
I think love thy neighbor is a good precept, and I don't know that we should necessarily legislate it, but I think it's a good precept. I think there are things from religion that are good. I interviewed Desmond Tutu years ago, who said that religion can be is like a knife. It can be used to spread butter or it could be used to stab people. But that doesn't mean that I want religious doctrine to be the same as the law of the land. We have a democracy, and it was founded on trying to get out from some type of like religious oppression, which means one religion shouldn't dominate in this country. That's my sense.
Yeah, and I see that, but I think I have an issue with where you would perceive religious doctrine is derived from. Right, a guy doesn't.
He's ready to
at
go.
least in Christianity, a guy doesn't go in a room and come out and say that he is a secret message from God that everyone now has to follow. Religious doctrine is ruled over, it's reasoned over, the same way any ideology is discovered.
I'm not talking about the validity of religious doctrine. I'm talking about religious doctrine supplanting democracy in civil society.
And I'm saying that religious doctrine is democratic inherently, and in the way that you.
Well, I mean, look, we can have a debate as to whether or not women should be subservient to men. I don't think they should be, and in a democracy, I don't think it's healthy.
Right, but when you said earlier with him that someone shouldn't have I don't know the exact word, like a chokehold on what is religious truth and what isn't religious truth. That's not how religious truth itself works, and that's not how religious truth is brought to the political table to have that work either, right?
I don't know. When Pete Hegseth is in a bar yelling, we're going to kill all Muslims.
Well, that's,
I mean, but now he's in charge of the largest military in the history of the world.
Like, come on, bro. Everything is for shits and giggles
informed
until
by
niggas
his Christian
that are
nationalism.
retarded.
I think that's a problem.
Well,
but we
niggas that
can
are stupid.
disagree on that.
Yeah, we don't take.
Press the button.
Pause. You've been voted
Have the
out by
finger on the
majority.
button.
Thanks,
Please
Sam.
return to your seat.
Okay, so Eleazar mentioned his views.
Not this nigga again. No, I'm about to skip through this, Michael. You're finna piss me off.
Essentially, conservatives
Can
don't
we vote
believe
to get
that
Michael
gay
off the
marriage
show?
should be allowed. I want to ask everybody in this room, is there any law or legislation that Donald Trump has passed to prohibit same-sex marriage in the last 4 years? Okay. Is there anyone in here who would potentially oppose two people kissing in public that are of the same sex? You could raise your hand if you want. Yes, in public, kissing in public. No law against it, just your own opinion. Okay, so these are all people's opinions, right? The same way you have your opinions.
Oh my god. Oh my god. please. No, I'm losing brain cells. Oh my God.
About Christians is the same way these people are
No,
allowed.
I don't have a problem with Christians.
Well, you do not believe that theology should be at its as a.
We should not have a theocracy.
Correct. And so what I'm saying is, I think that Christianity. I'm a Catholic. I think that Christianity is, fundamentally very important to instill family values in myself as well as every person who wants to have children. Now let's talk about.
I'm okay with that too.
Let's talk about Order 14,166. That is an executive order that Donald Trump just imposed on identifying what is male and female. So I personally believe, as well as many transsexuals, friends of mine believe that a woman is a biological female, as well as a man being a biological male. You are assigned what you are at birth. You are not assigned.
That's not the argument. The argument is, it's right there. It's in the top part. That's just next to the surrendered part. Why are we talking about trans people again?
Your gender later on. What you choose to express is something that is similar to wearing a garment, similar to what you decide to put on your face. And I don't think there should be laws or legislations dictating people or imposing laws to manipulate children, for example, to castrate their bodies at such a young age. 50% of children.
Do you know how many children are treated over the past 5 years? Let's say, I think it was from 2018 to 22, there was a study that just came out from Harvard. Do you know how many children received gender-affirming care, but broken down into puberty blockers and then hormones?
Give me the numbers.
You tell me. I'm curious.
Well, I'm curious because you're bringing it up.
No, I have the numbers.
Okay, tell me.
I do, but I'm curious if you know.
Tell me what the numbers
are. I promise to tell you after you tell me what you think it is.
I'm not gonna.
You guys will fucking know. No one that
we're not playing this game.
makes this argument fucking knows.
Because I think you think it's much higher. When you tell me that kids are being castrated, I know you don't really know what these numbers are. And I do know these numbers.
Okay, well, I can tell you this much.
What?
It was reported that scientifically every single child who has received gender-affirming care, about roughly 50% of them regret it. And 50% of them are suicidal because of it. They're actually more depressed because of it.
How many of those kids? How many?
A psychologist, by the way.
How many over the course of 5 years?
Well, tell me.
You tell me.
Tell me.
Just give me
I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to put me in this chokehold of like,
no, I'm not trying to put you in a chokehold. No, this is definitely an I got you moment because I'm suggesting to you that you think this problem is much bigger than it is.
It is a huge problem.
Okay.
Medi-Cal covers inmate trans women.
I understand that, yes. And I know one person has had that surgery.
I don't understand how my tax.
This is from the very leftist progressive institution known as Harvard School of Public Health. A new study, researchers at Harvard School of Public Health found little to no utilization of gender-affirming surgeries by transgender and gender-diverse minors in the United States. The study also found that cisgendered minors and adults had substantially higher utilization of analogous gender-affirming surgeries than their TGD counterparts. And this is the big part, where cisgender, meaning people who identify, again, I'm not the best expert on this, but this is just my understanding on this. Cisgender is those that align with the binary, as far as I understand, with the male and female binary. And according to this study, they are getting analogous gender-affirming surgery. They're getting surgeries that align with their current gender. So males are getting more male-affirming surgeries, and that could be maybe on a non-surgical end. It could be taking testosterone. For women, it could be taking pregnancy hormones and stuff like that. But this, again, that's not the point of this argument.
Should go for an inmate prisoner who wants to.
Did they give an actual number? The study found no gender. Oh, let's see. In the context, I think the stream is gonna make me crack. Shit, brother, crack open Michelob's. We finna be here for 3-4 hours. I'm finna get some snacks. The researchers. For the study found no gender-affirming surgeries performed on transgender youth ages 12 and younger in 2019 for teens aged 15 to 17 and adults aged 18 or older. So it's grouping in 15 and 17-year-olds at 2.1. You cannot transition with any form of medical intervention without both informed consent from the patient's parents. The informed part of the informed consent has to be given by a doctor, and I believe it has to be approved by the board of the hospital as well. So this is not just for shits and giggles and everybody can just walk into a fucking urgent care and get a banana split. Like, that's not how this works.
The transition.
Well, I think because we got to do health care for prisoners, and you don't consider it real health care. But
Gavin
hold on, I
Newsom
don't want
has
to get...
imposed
listen,
$2.6
it's
billion in
900 kids
2022.
over 5 years.
That is a lot of
receive
children.
puberty blockers.
That is a lot of children.
900
AB
kids over 5 years.
547
Do
just
you know
passed,
how many,
including
do you know how
gender
many kids
identity,
died during COVID?
gender identity
All right.
to allow children
10
to be
kids a
separated
month
from their
die
parents
from
just due to not
accidental
affirming their
gun-
gender
gun deaths.
identity.
But here's the point. Listen, Trump how is he hurting these people? He just rescinded the ability of the Labor Bureau to investigate discrimination in workplace. Are you for trans people being discriminated in workplace?
They're never being discriminated.
Are
Hold on.
you for trans
You're
people
asking-
being discriminated with
I'm
housing?
very passionate about that question, and can I answer it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I believe that affirmative action should be.
It's not affirmative action.
Oh, then what is it?
It's anti-discrimination. It's
Okay,
not saying that you have to
regardless,
hire
hold on.
trans people.
Okay,
It's
well,
saying
hold on.
you can't fire someone when you find out they're trans.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. So when you hire someone or when you interview someone, for example, you are supposed to interview them based on their knowledge and their work ethic, not based on sex.
I'm not saying affirmative
not based
action.
on their sexual
Are
orientation.
you allowed to fire them if you find out they're trans?
If you need to, if you need
Why
to,
would you need
then
to?
you should.
Why
if you
would
need
you
to,
need
you
Well, so
should.
we have a
Bring
disagreement.
up the
I don't
flag.
believe
Get 'em
people
out.
should be
Get 'em out.
discriminated against.
Get him out.
Pause.
Get him out.
And that's not discrimination.
Please don't
It's based on
ever.
your knowledge, not what you
Oh
sleep
my
with, not who you
God.
sleep with. Just saying.
You fucking queen. Goodbye. There's no need to be that dramatic, please. Okay, so this lady was in the preview. I want to hear what she has to say, and she has a
I
minute
actually
45
think
to
that
impress me.
this liberal
Go ahead, Taylor
world
Swift.
order needs to be thrown away completely, and I think Christian nationalism would be a good alternative. What we're seeing right now is
And
just
congratulations.
and thank you.
love
And
saying
yeah, I think
everyone is hype. Yeah,
what
brother,
we're seeing
you're
right
real
now
hype
is a
with
culture of
fucking
death.
caveman.
This
You
is
look
the
like a
most
Dagestani
suicidal
UFC fighter, not the good
generation
ones.
ever. We have millions of children dying by abortion. People aren't even reproducing. We don't even have like a.
Should we mandate people reproduce?
No, I don't think we need to mandate. We can just stop them from killing their kids. There
So
are like.
you want to outlaw abortion?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, this is...
That's forcing
we have
people
a
to have
fundamental
children.
disagreement on this, and my claim was that if you voted for Trump, it would be to your benefit if you want to outlaw
I think it would
abortion.
benefit. I think it would benefit
That's the funny part. They're all
everyone.
making Sam's
Yeah,
argument
I disagree.
for him,
I think
but they're
that,
all arguing
that
about
women
different
should have
things.
the
They're
right to
arguing
choose.
I
as
think
for
that
the
it would benefit everyone to
justification
bring back the family
of
unit,
Christian fundamentalism
to stop
instead of
having
saying
women just thrown
he's
into the
not
workforce.
Maybe
benefiting.
we shouldn't allow women to choose
again,
to
there's also two
divorce
other
unless their husbands say it's okay.
topics or two other criteria in the question.
mean,
a
I
billionaire
don't
or a
really believe in
nationalist.
divorce
No one wants
in
to take the
general, so,
nationalist because
sure.
nationalist is
All
Nazi.
right, I mean, this,
no one wants
this
to take
I think,
billionaire because
though,
everybody in that bitch
reinforces
is
my
broke.
point that if you are
But it would be better for society. It
Christian
would be better for
theocrat, then
everybody
you
in
would be
society.
happy.
And same with xenophobic what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
To be xenophobic nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the
Word
same
of the
culture.
day
We should
today,
have
Chad.
assimilation.
Which
is
do you get to
xenophobia.
choose what
And
the
this
culture
lady,
is?
We
if you
already
ain't know what
have
that word
a
is,
dominant culture.
have you thinking
What
it's a
is
good
a
thing.
dominant
European and Christian values and identity. That is the
This lady trying to tell you xenophobic nationalism is a good thing. Xenophobia, the definition, dislike or prejudice against people from other countries, is a good thing. Is a good thing. Is a good thing.
dominant culture.
White
It's
Christian-
rooted in European identity.
White, so your argument is
That
that
has been the
it's-
dominant culture.
Just to be
and
clear,
we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been.
Wrong.
Would you really disagree with that?
You're wrong.
What
We're all the brown people that came from the Caribbean and Africa. We're not Christian.
is it then if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of
For the
America...
majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been
outnumbered the slave
for better or for
owners.
worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe so.
I remember specifically being taught in school that the American Revolution was fought with the Americans, the French, there were actually some slaves, and Native Americans. Those all those groups of people were here for many, many years before we even were a country.
It's like the 1960s. Even then, we had this idea of a
when the
melting
first slave
pot
was brought to
literally
America, was it
means
1619?
assimilation too. It means melting. It means you're assimilating to the dominant
But,
culture. Is that not
well,
what melting
no,
means?
no, it doesn't
And
mean
now
that
instead
people
we're
assimilate
saying there's something
to
wrong
the
with
dominant
xenophobia.
culture.
When were white people the
No.
dominant culture?
I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice.
Plymouth?
And people, I think what
Plymouth
you're
Rock?
expressing, though, is really what the Trump
God. They're really showing that
movement
they
at
all
its
just,
heart
like,
is about. And
all
I think
20
that's
I mean,
people
I
have one
disagree. I
brain
don't
cell
think Trump's
collectively.
anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Trump's basically a Democrat from 15 years ago when it comes to social
So you
issues.
don't think that he's conservative
I-
enough for you?
I beg your
Oh,
pardon.
definitely nowhere close.
Did
No.
you just
He's
say
not
my glorious king
xenophobic
is a
enough for
leftist?
you.
No, he's trying
A
to pour
lefty
a bunch
terrorist?
of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
I have
Right,
never
okay,
been a
you wanna get
Democrat.
them
I
out, too.
rebuke that
Yeah.
in the name
No,
of Donald Trump.
I think you're making my argument for me.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
And
I'm
get her
just
ass
saying
out of
it's not
here.
even in this.
Get her ass out of here. You fucking losing your skirt's dumb.
My next
I want to
claim
see Lil
is
Wayne
the
talk.
GOP will destroy Social Security and health care.
Okay. The GOP will destroy Social Security and healthcare. That is a talking point. Can we get someone new? I want to see Lil
so
Wayne do the dance.
What if Social Security should go away?
Why? Why would giving old people money be a bad idea? Old people who worked and put money into that system shouldn't get that money back. Why should that system go away, Ben?
That's my question to you.
Because Social Security keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. And not only does it keep our elderly out of poverty, it's essentially a social insurance program that protects you if at the end of your life you don't have enough money to survive.
For
And
right
so-
now, do you know that it's also the albatross around our generation's neck?
No, it isn't.
Okay, so
Let me just explain this.
Well, you're
Let me
going to
explain
go
this to you.
back to lecturing
No,
me about Social
because-
Security.
Well,
we don't
that's
have,
what we're talking
we
about,
are,
Social
Yeah,
Security.
Social Security is one of the top 3 funded.
Social Security is almost the biggest thing that our government does.
Exactly, and we are
it
more than
keeps
$30 trillion in debt.
2/3 of our, well, first of all, Social Security cannot contribute.
Social Security doesn't contribute to the national debt. It's not like we're taking a loan out to pay for Social Security. Social Security is paid for in taxes. In taxes. Ben, I'm assuming you have worked once in your life. And I'm talking to you as if I'm talking to you directly, even though this video's, we'll never see this video. I'm sure you've worked. I'm sure you received a pay stub, and at the bottom of that pay stub, it said Social Security tax, and took about $100 or $200 of your check if you got paid weekly. That's where the money for Social Security comes from. The reason why we're in national debt is because we take out money to pay for wars.
Legally to the deficit.
Because they don't even account it in the federal deficit
That's
every year.
correct.
We have
because
30
it's
years. We're
self-funding. When Social Security started in 1936, you have more workers than retirees because people haven't entered into retirement. By 1970, it was at 3.5 to 1. Now it's at 2.5 to 1. But productivity has increased during that time, so the amount of money paid into Social Security has been up there. The reason why we are running out of money just for the trust fund, not for Social Security, like I say, if we do nothing with Social Security now, it is statutorily unable to contribute to the debt. The math is right there. The reason why the trust fund is running out is because wealth inequality has hoarded so much money above the cap.
I think it's because the government does a terrible job managing their money. They have a huge spending problem, and they go, oh, look at all this money we have for Social Security that's earmarked for 60 years from now that we're just going to spend on something right now.
40 years ago, they predicted this. This is an actuarial table. Accountants sit there and look at it. This is a very easy math problem.
Accountants in the government are always right? That's totally the thing that you're saying? That they're always correct about money, right? That's why we have a $40 trillion debt problem.
The problem isn't the math with the.
And I bet Ben is upset that the Republicans are passing legislation that would increase the national debt. I bet Ben is real upset about
$40
that.
trillion debt problem. It's the you have tax
It's
cuts.
the spending problem. I totally agree with you, which I would argue is part of why Social Security's gone in the hole already.
That's simply not true.
Oh, okay. So we're out of money from the Social Security bucket.
Like
no.
20
Statutorily,
lunatics.
by that I mean by law, Social Security pays for itself. If we do nothing,
You know what,
the
he's not even little, he's more
6.2%
like,
that your employer and your employee pays
like a
into it will
conservative,
pay out
Playboy Cardi.
78% of benefits starting in 2033.
And why is it going down? If everything's so much better, why is it only 78%?
If we raise the cap, there's a cap right now at $176,000. So, for instance, if you make $100,000, you pay $6,200 into that.
A year,
a year. But if you make $4 million, do you know how much money you pay into Social Security?
The same amount.
$6,200.
And so why should wealthy people hang on? Why should wealthy people pay a higher percentage?
No, they should pay the same percentage. 6.2 on $400,000, 6.2 on $1 million.
And why should they pay even more money at all? Because they make more money? Again, you fundamentally have this idea that because somebody, you have an idea that because somebody makes more money, that's fundamentally wrong,
not give you
right?
money.
No, I don't think it's fundamentally wrong. I think that they should pay more taxes into it. Now, I do think as a society,
if you have more,
we should not allow billionaires. So, for
They
instance,
can pay more taxes generally. Why should they?
Well,
hang on.
and the greatest
people just
expansion
have
of our economy
Hang on,
in this
does a
country.
billionaire
I
get
think
more
you should
money from
pay
Social
up a little
Security
bit
when
more
if they went to
apples
go
to the
take it
Apple
than
Fund.
I would?
No,
of course
it's
not. So why
insurance.
should they pay more?
I'll tell you what. Because it is a social insurance program that keeps you from being in poverty when you're a senior. And the reason why I think billionaires should pay more taxes than other people, even a higher percentage, is because it works better for society. The greatest expansion we've had in this country in terms of economics and the least amount of wealth disparity was in the 40s and 50s and 60s in this country. You know what the top marginal rate was?
It was high.
30,
I don't know the exact number, but
If you made over $470,000 in 1955, every dollar you would make above that was taxed at 90%.
So I have a question.
90 cents on every dollar was taxed above 470. So if we had in today's dollars,
which is wild, by the way. But
and it's also the greatest expansion we had of the economy.
Yeah, you can expand for a time, and then you see places. You see like Nordic countries that were like, oh, let's tax the hell out of our rich people, right? And then they go, whoops, we messed up. We can't actually live off of our terrible. We basically are able to live off our economic boom that they had between like the 40s and the 90s, and then we have to revert all of that because we made a terrible choice and we were able to have a party for 50 years until we realized we ran through all the money that capitalism got us. So let me ask you real quick. So the average...
Sam's brain is hurting.
The average person...
My brain is also hurting,
right?
Because I have no response to that.
Right now, they fundamentally look at Social Security, young people like me, and they go, I'm going to have that money sitting, waiting for me when I retire. Since your opinion is whatever works best for the average person is better, wouldn't you rather shift towards something that I would agree with, which is getting people that are 19, 20 years old into funding their own retirement rather than relying on other people to fund it for them?
You're talking like the 401k.
Sure. Well, not just the 401k, but IRAs, any other type of retirement. Would you agree? Would we agree with that?
Social Security was set up as part of a three-legged stool where back in the day when I was a kid, we had defined benefit pensions, where you'd know how much money you would get out. That all shifted in the 80s to defined contribution, where you know how much you put in. The 401k started during that Reagan era. It has been a disaster because the fact of the matter, for better or for worse, people just don't save in the way that you're talking about.
Why?
It would be nice if
Well,
they
if
could.
if the
because
government,
things
If
the government were
Because
changing the
things happen.
mindset and actually pushing
You are
that
in a
cultural shift
shrinking-
towards.
What do you mean why? If you're in a shrinking economy and your purchasing power is halved because the price of eggs is now $12 a fucking carton, if you have a pool of money sitting to the side that is your emergency savings has already been drained because you had another bill to pay or whatever the case, the cost of living is going up, whatever the case may be, they're gonna take money out that 401k. You're not gonna leave it in there and be like, this is gonna benefit me in 40 years when I take this out if I'm still alive by then. So I'm just gonna leave that in there. Whereas in Social Security, it's taken out. It's in the government fund. You cannot touch that.
We're not just going to hand you money when you're 65. You have to plan for it right
We've had a
now.
40-year experiment with the government affecting the cultural mindset, and it failed.
We've had a 40-year experiment
failed.
of everybody. You know
More
what my
people are
my
now
parents say?
relying on Social Security
Do you know what
for their
grandparents say?
retirement.
They go, "Well, I'm just waiting for my Social Security check to come in," rather than I have $800,000 waiting for me because I thought about it when I was 19 and 20 because I didn't have this grab bag of money waiting.
What most 19 to 20-year-olds have money to invest that are in the middle class? What surplus money do you have when you have to pay for textbooks, when you have to pay for food, when you have to pay for living, any supplies? You're going to have, that's not even including having interests and hobbies that all costs money. Everything costs money. Except I'm waiting for the day that breathing air costs money. So what money do you have to put to the side and let grow for X amount of time? Most people don't have that extra money.
For me, you're assuming that young
it would be
people.
great. I try and tell my kids.
So we
to
agree.
save
So we
money,
agree.
too.
We should get rid of Social Security
No,
and
no.
phase it out. Well, so we should phase out. How would you listen to this idea? You phase out Social Security to where people who have 5 years left before they retire get 100% of the benefits, and then people like me who have 40 years until we retire,
Dude,
I'm not
I
going to
don't
get it.
wanna screw you.
I'm going to get screwed either way.
No,
you
you're
really,
not.
you really
No,
think
you're
I'm going to
not.
get Social Security
I
someday?
guarantee you, at the very least,
40 minutes? I'll probably watch another. If y'all want to watch the whole thing, we can watch the whole thing.
you're going to get 78% of your benefits.
That's
if you
awesome. I'll
join
get
me-
$9,000 a year. That's great.
In calling for our government to increase the cap, in fact, get rid of the cap, then your grandkids will get Social Security.
I would much
100% of their
rather,
benefits.
and again, maybe we'll just disagree, but I would much rather result to, hey, 20-year-olds, please save for your own retirement, invest for your own retirement, because the government is bad at dealing with money.
And what happens
Don't
if they
rely on
don't?
them. What happens if what?
What happens if those 20-year-olds don't listen to you?
The same thing that happens if a 20-year-old just doesn't go and get a job because I
No,
tell them to.
no.
They're going to have a problem, but that's not my fault.
No, I got news for you. It's not your fault, but there used to be in New York City 30,000 people sleeping
No one
on
in
the
this
Bowery
room was
before
alive before Social Security. We've all lived under this, just like the
And it has
income
been
tax.
the most successful government program in the history of our government
Things that are
programs.
successful don't just start to die out and end up in the
dying out.
No,
it's
it doesn't
the
just
grab
start
bag
to
of money,
die out,
the
it's
massive
being
excess
crippled.
that was there in the early years because of the 42-to-1
No,
beneficiary.
it wasn't a massive excess in 1936.
42 to 1
Dude,
is
that was
a
just
massive
because
excess.
There weren't that many people who had entered into the Social Security program.
And the fact that it
In 1970, it was 3.5 workers to 1. Now it's 2.5, but productivity has increased it. I've told you why the Social Security Trust Fund is running out. It is because of wealth disparity. Billionaires hiding and hoarding their money above the cutoff line, which is 176,000. That's the cap. If you
hiding
remove
and
the cap,
hoarding their money.
your grandkids
Billionaires aren't keeping $2 billion under their mattress. They're investing it back into.
They're just
Oh my God,
putting
this
it
guy's a
into some
fucking
stock
moron.
market,
Please,
or
someone
they're
vote
just
him out.
looking around.
And what do you
for
think a
Relax, like
401k or
billionaires
an
don't
IRA
hide their
relies
money
upon?
in
It relies on the
stocks.
stock market and things
Yeah,
like
a
that.
401k relies on the stock
Offshore
market, and I
accounts.
knew people who were retiring in 2008
I'm not even
when
that
the stock
economically
market
smart.
tanked, and they got screwed.
Well, that's a whole
But
other,
their
that's a
Social
whole other
Secu-
problem.
No,
I
no,
would argue that's
that is
largely
the
driven by
problem.
the government
That is
being
the-
once
that
again
is the
terrible with
problem.
policy and
That is
creating
the problem.
bad economic
Social
hazards.
Security is there regardless of what happens with the stock market.
Okay,
It's-
pause. You've been voted out by the
Crossed
majority.
over.
Please return to your
Please
seat.
leave. I don't want to shake your hand. You're creepy. Is that a sister? Why are there so many black people here? Finally, someone new.
Good evening.
Sam, nice to meet you.
There's an idea that you have that basically government can kind of fix all these problems, right? If you didn't save for retirement, well, then the government can just come in.
I never trust anybody that wears a sports jacket or a suit jacket, whatever the fuck that's called. Blazer. That's the word I'm looking for. With a t-shirt.
Swoop in and save you from
Well, not
that.
swoop in. It starts on literally the day you get your Social Security.
Sure. It swoops in once you retire, right? Once you can.
Well, you pay
once you
into
can,
it.
Right, exactly. And so you believe this idea basically that government is an effective organization, which it does time and time again. If you look at history, that's proven to not be true.
When you're hitting at retirement, you don't know. This is an insurance program. That's it. It's an insurance program, and it basically says you're insured against eating cat food when you're 65, and it works. It works.
No, it doesn't. You should have, well, one, you should have your own personal.
How doesn't it work?
How doesn't it work?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've already discussed the details of how it is just completely failing as a program. Like,
well, how is it failing?
Because I'm not going to receive any Social Security
I've already
benefit.
told you right now.
I know. I'm not going to rehash out that debate.
Well,
the main
look
issue.
at the numbers. You've just been told this, and you know why you've been told it? Is because they want to raid it to give tax cuts to rich people. That's why.
So are you saying there are the Trump tax cuts were only for rich people? You're saying
No,
people...
I'm not saying they're only for rich people.
Oh, okay. Then how could
rich
they
people
only...
benefited more from it than low-income people. And I would
And
say,
what do you mean benefited more from that? Because we already went over the percentage numbers, and we know that's not true.
They don't need the money as much, and they don't need it.
What are you talking about? These rich people are the people that are invested to allow...
The argument is piss poor.
What's up? Hey. Good to be back.
Nice to see you.
Okay, yeah, nice to see you too.
And healthcare too.
Oh, okay, but Social Security is the program that you're very concerned about, and that
Medicare. I'd love a Medicare for all program, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the reason you're focusing in on Social Security precisely is because Social Security is the most successful in a shadow of social welfare programs and government spending. That it's like the Democrats.
It's also the biggest bucket of money.
Sure, it is the biggest bucket, but the
thing.
Democrats have these social programs and this deficit spending, and it just never ends. It's never enough money. So you're focusing on Social Security because it is the one successful child, but you're ignoring all the social welfare state that we've become.
Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid make up
the majority.
Over like a
right. So
70%
of our federal spending is mandatory, and that, you're right. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on debt. 8% of who we're paying for that. So the Democrats run on this. Essentially, they want a welfare state. So yes, Social Security might help a lot of people, but it's like,
what Democrat is saying that they want to pay for everybody's bills? That they want to give? They want to just give money to the people? Please tell me. I don't know. I'll vote for them over Chuck Schumer.
We're closer to a welfare state than we've ever been. 38% of the GDP in the U.S. is government spending. That's the highest since World War II. So us conservatives, we're trying to tell you, like, you guys are fiscally really
So are you worried
irresponsible.
about the tax cuts and what that does to the debt and deficit?
The tax cuts increased revenue.
No.
Yes.
No,
I want
they
to tell you
did
about
not.
Kansas.
No,
Okay, tell me about
They
Kansas.
did not.
Sam Brown back in 2012 brought in Arthur Laffer. You know the Laffer curve, right? That's
Laffer curve, yeah.
the argument that if you cut taxes, you're going to get more revenue.
And that's exactly what happened.
Kansas.
No, that's exactly what happened
It
in TCJ.
destroyed Kansas. By 2016,
Let's
a
look at the
Republican
numbers.
legislature raised taxes again. They destroyed their education
Reality
system.
is against you, my friend.
Look up
The
Kansas.
numbers.
In fact,
The numbers
during
say
the Trump administration, they sent Sam Brown back. They made him the ambassador to faith because they didn't want this guy
if
around
you
because
want
it
to
was
tax
a
the
disaster.
rich, you should vote Republican because they pay more in taxes. Under Republican, it was the same
Revenue
as
went
Reagan.
down.
It
Look
was
at
the same as
Kansas.
Trump.
Look at
the
Kansas.
U.S. Look at the U.S.
Look at
We have
Kansas.
the numbers
It
for
was
this.
the perfect
Obama's
experiment.
best year,
It destroyed
federal income
Kansas.
revenue is pales in comparison to Trump's worst year. Do you get what I'm saying? Does more taxes necessarily equate to more revenue?
Yes.
No, that's where you're wrong. So if you look at TCJA, and I'll say the numbers again, the top 1% paid more into the system. GDP grew, wages grew 3% year over year under TCJA. So when you're saying tax the rich, like,
But you're
it sounds
saying,
like you're actually a Republican. You just don't know it yet.
You're confusing causation with
No, I'm not.
correlation
No, I'm
because Obama's economic recovery was way too slow, and I agree with you on
Way
that.
too slow.
Way too slow.
When you have tons of stimulus, what you're doing is you're creating the Great Depression for the bottom 90%. All the assets inflate. So who does that benefit? Your policies benefit the 1%.
No,
Inflation
no.
disproportionately benefits the 1%. It's an immoral tax on the poor.
So the TCJA that he's referring to is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was Trump's signature tax bill that he passed in 2017 that was supposedly gave us so much money into our taxes, back into the pockets of Americans. And this is from the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School, which, funny enough, oh, that's also the school where Donald Trump went to. So I guess it must be a real stout institution. Most of the cost of extending the TCJA comes from reduced revenues, which decreased by $4 trillion over the 2025-2034 period. About $3.4 trillion of revenue loss comes from a reduction in individual tax payments, with $623 billion coming from a reduction in corporate taxes paid. Now, the way taxes work is when tax laws are passed, they don't go into effect immediately, right? So when we saw some economic growth during the Trump administration, that was actually in the final years of the Obama administration. That was the result of the tax policy that was passed in the Obama administration. So when Joe Biden took office, that was when the TCJA took effect. Okay? That's when most of the effects of the taxation bill took effect, right? So while some people under Trump and under Biden a little bit saw some marginal gains back, the people with the biggest gains were the super ultra wealthy. And a lot of the temporary tax cuts that some of the middle class people got are set to phase out. But the ones that aren't phasing out are the major corporate and international tax provisions.
Listen,
and that's exactly what happens when they
COVID
stimulate.
inflation was not a function of monetary stimulus.
It absolutely was. They increased the money supply by $6 trillion.
No, I
man.
understand they did that. I understand they did that, and they could pull it back on taxes with the wealthy if they wanted to. You're making an argument for higher taxation.
Do you think taxing people makes the country wealthier? Is that what you think?
Does it make the country
Do taxes make us wealthy? Is that government increasing taxes? Are we now more wealthy? Do you think that the only way you create wealth is by producing?
If you tax and spend, government stimulus can increase GDP, of course.
Is GDP wealth?
Is GDP wealth?
If we import 10 million immigrants and our GDP goes up, are we now wealthier? If the housing costs more, if CPI goes up because there's more people.
No, I understand. And inflation is under control, and we haven't pulled that money off the table.
Right, but I'm just saying that
inflation is back down because we had a problem.
The welfare
with
state
logistics.
makes us all poorer.
Yes,
it does. And you can see it across history.
If you compare,
people want to come here for economic opportunity. We don't want handouts. We want opportunity. That's why, as an immigrant, that's why my family came here. We left the socialist paradise. It's garbage. The people that come here want economic opportunity, and you're stifling that. You're undermining capitalism and the free markets with your utopian vision.
There is no free market.
Well, there's not anymore.
No, there's never
but now
been a
there
free
used to be.
No.
That is what makes America the greatest. That's what makes America is the greatest economy in the world because of the free market. Free market capitalism is the most ethical and moral.
America had was when we had 90% tax.
That's not true. The numbers are against you.
1940, 1950, 1960, the highest top marginal tax rate was 90%.
So what happened in the 70s?
And we
when
had
Milton Friedman predicted stagflation in the 70s with your social welfare.
We had OPEC. We had
your
an
welfare
oil shock that drove inflation way up, and that was a function of OPEC. But in the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s, highest top marginal tax rate was 90%. We had wealth inequality shrink.
Post-World War
We had something
II
called the
industrial
Great Compression, and more people enjoyed.
Post-World War II industrial revolution. We were producing more than every other country. It's because we were producing more than every other country. That's what creates wealth.
And we were doing that with a 90% tax rate on the wealthiest individuals.
When
90%.
Reagan came in and brought it down, the top 1% paid more. Can you believe that?
No.
Do you know that federal income tax? Wait. You know federal income tax? When it was established.
You're talking about the Laffer curve, and I'm telling you to go look at
here's my last claim. When federal income tax in 1913, when it was established, was only targeted at the people making $100,000 and over. Now we don't even know, most people don't even know that. It's just a base tax. Why? Because the projections that they had of taxing the rich didn't work out like they thought. Because it doesn't work out. There's a ton of loopholes. The rich are smart. Like, the rich people are smart. So focus on
our
producing.
top marginal rate still produced an effective tax rate that is double what it is today. 50% effective tax rate.
Does not create more wealth.
Yes.
More taxes
well,
do not
I don't know what you mean by wealth. I mean,
wealth is very simple. It's production of goods and services. That's what wealth is. That's what creates wealth. Money. People think money is wealth. Money buys wealth.
Creates less wealth inequality. And then you have wealth that is shared by more people rather than being in the hands of a plutocracy or a plutonomy. And then you get stuff like an oligarchy.
We've seen what happens when you punish your top producers over and over again. They leave. They stop producing. The government,
capital flight's a myth.
No, it isn't. You cripple the economy. Guess what happens next?
Wait. When did this happen in the country? When we had a 90% tax rate?
It happens in every socialist country. This is the socialist playbook. They come in and they're like, guys.
This is not a socialist country, and I'm not calling for socialism to have higher tax rates.
It is more socialist than ever before.
No,
we have more social welfare spending.
No.
GDP, I'll say it again, 38% of government spending, of GDP is government spending. We have more social welfare programs.
Welfare
and look at
only
what
accounts
happens
for about 7%
how come we have all these programs and the black community is still living in poverty?
What programs are you talking about that are geared towards the black community? We during in 2021.
What do you mean, what programs?
We expended. Hold on. In 2021.
What do you mean? What program?
Hold on.
How much money is enough? When is it enough? You have the richest country in the world.
We offered $300.
The way you guys think is just insane to me. Like,
let me just finish this.
All right, go ahead.
In 2021, we extended the child tax credit, which is basically a payment, $300 per social welfare.
Yes.
We cut child poverty in 1 year by 45%. By 45%, but because no Republican would join the Democrats, and Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin voted against this provision in Bill back. I'm talking 2021. From 2021 to 2022, we cut child poverty in this country by 45%. Look it up.
Yeah, now I have to check all my facts. I know it's coming at you overly aggressive.
I will give you my phone number.
Arguing again, a point that is not being argued. You're talking about Social Security and healthcare.
And you will see that we cut child poverty in a year by 45%.
I'll look into your claim.
All right, guys.
All right. We'll talk after.
My next claim is Trump's policies make the rich richer and the working class poor.
Sam is better than me, bro. I would be so tired after the fucking.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Hunter Howard. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, this dude is about to spit some heat with the cargo joggers, the red button down, and the red tie. He's finna light Sam up.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask what policies in specific are you?
Hunter. Yes.
Are you referencing to?
Tax cuts for the rich. I think his idea of tariffs on countries in the way that he's talking about will make people poorer. I think all of the work that they're doing in terms of attacking the government agencies will make people poorer because, when you get agencies that are supposed to protect us from corporate interests, they will externalize their costs, those corporations, instead of actually assuming themselves. So their profits are made on the backs of all of us, whether it's our health, our protection from consumer rights, worker rights. His anti-union policies will make us poorer.
So real quick, I'm going to touch on one of the things that you said. Now, there was a lot to unpack there, but
There's
we'll
a lot of
start,
policies.
we'll start at the very beginning. You talked about taxes. Let's talk about, in his first term, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. There are a couple things in that specific policy that actually do benefit the middle class and the lower class more than the top 1%. So you mentioned taxes, right? But in that, from the IRS data that came out, the middle class and lower class got affected. I think they ended up saving like 3 to 4% on their taxes, on their tax cuts, whereas the billionaires only saved 2%. So if we're talking an actual dollar amount, sure, the billionaires saved more, but they also make a lot more, right? Also, the billionaires don't really care about an extra grand or two. In that specific policy, the child tax credit doubled from $1,000 per household to $2,000. No billionaire cares about an extra grand in their pocket, but I can guarantee you the working class does. So how would you rebuttal that?
I would say, in terms of the taxes themselves, well, the policies that Trump wants to pursue this time are to expand those taxes for wealthy folks. And over time, what starts to happen is you have this wealth disparity, and as the wealth disparity increases, it becomes harder for working people, essentially, to keep up. Things become more expensive. You get inflationary pressures when you have people with more money. We have more and more billionaires than we did 4 years ago. And a large part of that was obviously COVID, but a large part of it is also money starts to accelerate. Once you, like you say, when a millionaire gets a tax cut for a couple of grand or 60 grand or $500,000 at the end of the day, they end up investing that and it ends up growing because they're not out there working for their money. Their money is just is doing all the work.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think we can agree with you on that when it comes to, billionaires and millionaires and there being a wealth gap in our country, right? I don't think Republicans or liberals would disagree on that, but I think where we will fundamentally disagree is under Trump, right, the stats show that take-home pay was higher for the middle class and the lower class. Inflation was down. They weren't paying as much on taxes.
Inflation was down, but wage growth was actually greater during the Biden administration.
Well, that's because due to COVID, when a lot of people lost jobs.
No. I mean, I'm talking in percentage comparison between those 4 years and these past 4 years, wage growth grew, not from as a baseline on 2020, but I'm talking as a baseline from 2016.
Interesting. Okay, well then another point that I want to talk on with you real quick is you talked about slashing government agencies, for instance, the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm sure you've heard about that a lot in the news.
That's not a government agency. That's just some committee.
It actually an executive order was signed to make DOJ an official government agency as of less than a week ago. So yeah, It is an official government agency. So obviously we're talking about money. We want people to be able to afford a house. We want them to be able to afford to raise a family, right? As a young man myself,
so if it's an actual government agency, then I guess Elon Musk either is a government employee and can't receive federal funding for SpaceX, or he isn't a federal employee and he's not actually running Doge.
I want to be able to grow up in America and be able to afford food one day, right? I mean, I can now, but continue that. And at the way things are going, it's unsustainable for people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle. So we have to come to a common ground on how to fix that. What's unsustainable? The fact that cost of living is increasing year after year.
What does Doge do to inhibit cost of living?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Doge is going to do, the Department of Government Efficiency, is slash a lot of the federal spending, right? So what happens when the feds...
What spending is going to get cut?
So I'm getting there. 1 second, sir. So what's going to happen is the Department of Government Efficiency is going to slash a lot of federal spending. What happens is the government, Republicans, Democrats alike, spend a bunch of money that, excuse my language, but it's nonsense, right? They spend it out here, they spend it out there.
Be more specific. Here or there, are you talking about cutting defense? Because they're not going to cut defense.
Well, for example,
wait a second.
Well, no. Let me finish. Okay. $175 billion to Ukraine, first and foremost. That was a bunch of nonsense. So we're going to talk about that, but we also have a bunch of other things in the Defense Department, as well as a bunch of DEI departments.
Well, they're not touching, first of all, there are no DEI departments.
That's completely false.
Listen. Defense spending is not going to be touched by Doge. And when you talk about the government, what's the biggest expenditure government has?
Our military and Social Security are our top two.
And Medicare and Medicaid, right? Now, they're not going to touch the military. Are they going to cut Social Security? You think that's going to?
You're asking me like I'm part of Doge.
No. Well, you're telling me that Doge is going to help everybody here, and I'm telling you, if they cut Social Security, everybody in here is going to get hit. Because these folks are going to have to pay for their parents because Social Security keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. So tell me what they're going to cut that's going to make it easier for Americans.
I already did.
What?
I told you the $175 billion that we've sent to Ukraine. We're no longer going to
so he's going to...
Yes, so Donald Trump has signed an executive order.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Thank you, Hunter, you goddamn booger eater. Get out of here. Get out of here. There's only 20 minutes left. There's a bunch of people that have not spoken. Bro, why is it the same fucking people? Why do you have 20 people here?
Okay, so why did we see a higher increase in the top 1%?
And it's always the minorities that have to try so hard. It's the pick-me's.
Paying as part of federal income revenue under TCJA.
Why did we see a higher increase in the...
So under TCJA, it was passed 2017. Right. It was effective 2018. 2018 and onward, we actually saw the top 1% pay more. They had more of the federal income tax burden. They paid 45% as opposed to Obama. During Obama's tax plan, they only paid about 40 to 42% of the federal income tax.
Because they got more money.
Right, okay, so they got more money.
They got richer.
But why are they paying, and why did they get richer? So this goes on inflation that...
COVID.
PPP that's loans. My point, is the rich are getting funding. Richer.
Right, but why would you say that they're getting richer? But you mentioned inflation? Or?
No, they're not. I think that the inflation, to the extent that there was money that wasn't a function of logistics and other problems that we had during COVID, yeah, the rich got richer. Not all inflation is a function of monetary inflation.
That's true, but when we look at COVID and we can see that they increased the money supply by 40%, they added $6 trillion, and you have a Federal Reserve System that's doing quantitative easing and pumping stimulus into the economy, you can attribute that to left-wing policy. The entire Federal Reserve System is Keynesian economics. Those are very left-wing.
Well, I can tell you this: inflation went up in Western European countries the same rate
that had stimulus.
No. They didn't have the same level of stimulus that we did. No, they did.
They absolutely did.
They did.
You can look at Japan. Yeah, I hear this topic all the time from the Democrats. They say, "Oh, inflation was global." Not true. China never went above 3% inflation during all of COVID, and they were actually they were under deflationary pressures. Japan, which is part of the G7, was also never had deflationary pressures. They never had inflation increase. The only countries that had inflation increase. I'm talking in
Western Europe. You could see inflation. Well, you could England, Germany, Italy, France. They didn't stimulate as much as we did. It wasn't monetary inflation. If you look at the cost of goods and logistics that screwed up because of COVID.
So let's look at the reason. All international trade, because we're the world reserve currency, is done in U.S. dollars. Because we experience it. Domestic inflation was high.
So you're saying our inflation caused higher inflation in Europe?
Absolutely, because
that's not what economists say.
Well, you can look at the facts. International trade is we have dollar-denominated international trade. All international trade is that's why we're the world reserve currency. You guys claim that the U.S. recovered faster than anybody else. It's like, well,
it did.
It's because we have a privilege of being the world reserve currency, and we export our inflation. Like the strength.
We export our inflation.
Yeah, and let me explain that. Let me explain that the U.S. dollar is the most safe asset in the world. In times of great crisis and great volatility, like COVID crisis, everybody turns to the dollar. Sure. Many currencies are tied to the dollar. So it's like when you...
The euro is not tied to the dollar.
The euro is not, but international trade. So if the euro actually crashed against the dollar during COVID. The euro used to be above the dollar.
I'm unclear what your point is.
My point is that the inflation is caused by left-wing policies.
I apologize for this immensely
inflation was caused by,
you're saying,
supply shock and pumping trillions of dollars into the economy.
First of all, you understand that the Federal Reserve is not part of Biden didn't have control over the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely not, but the entire Federal Reserve System is left-wing in economic theory. That's the Keynesian economics. It's interventionist economics. So
you're saying that the
more you
quantitative easing,
the more you stimulate. Yeah.
Why didn't we get it through QE?
We do get it through QE.
Why didn't we get inflation during the Obama years?
We did get inflation.
We didn't get
the wealth gap that you guys attribute.
Wait.
We absolutely did.
What numbers were inflation did we get during the Obama years that were outside of like the 2% sort of Fed target?
I don't think it was as high as COVID. COVID hit as high as 9%.
No, it wasn't even remotely
right,
close.
But when we look at the effects of compounding inflation.
QE 1, 2, and 3 all happened during the Obama years. If your theory was correct, we would have had rampant inflation. In fact, Glenn Beck was talking about how we were going to turn into Weimar Germany, and none of that happened.
But here's the factors you're missing.
None of it.
Here's the factors you're missing.
So if you look at what's happening at Western Europe, well, no, listen.
We didn't close down the economy. The Biden administration closed down the economy.
I understand.
No, that was not the entire world.
Excuse me, the Biden administration?
Yes, they forced mask mandates. They supported Democrats.
Wait.
They supported Democrat
Do you
states.
not remember who was president in the first year of COVID?
The first 2 years of COVID?
Yeah, it was Trump. I'm not saying Trump had a role in this. But I'm saying.
Well, wait a second. By the time in 2021, the economy was opening back up.
Yes, the economy.
All of what you're talking about.
No thanks to the Democrats.
Well, okay,
the Democrats wanted to keep it closed.
Okay. Okay, you can talk about hypothetically what the Democrats want, but
it's not hypothetically. We can look at we can look at their mandates. We can look at them closing down.
The economy closed down in 2020, March of 2020.
Well, okay, sure.
Donald Trump was president.
Get him out.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Could you please? Playboy Artie, please. God damn it.
Good. How you doing, Sam?
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
It's
when you're
Bra
talking
from
about
Dagestan.
inflation,
Brian from Dagestan.
in
2 years
2021,
forget.
Janet Yellen said it would be transitory.
Grapple camp.
And then again in
Russell,
2022
2
she
bears a
said it would
day.
be transitory, and
Boris
it turned out to not be transitory. And then one major thing happened in 2022. I think we all know what that was. That was the war in Ukraine. And I believe, and I can explain, that the war in Ukraine was explicitly caused by Joe Biden's bad foreign policy, and that shot inflation up from, like, there was already pretty bad inflation in early 2022 and late 2021, but it shot it up from the low kind of margins in like 3 or 4%, all the way to 9% in 2022 of July at the peak.
Inflation is now down around 2%, around where
in between 2.5 and 6,
where they're looking to get it, and we have really close to record unemployment that we've had over the past 4 years. But how does this have to do with Trump's policies not making the richer richer and the rest of us poor?
Okay, so what I was just explaining with, I was going to get into oil prices. So oil prices skyrocketed in 2022 because in 2021, when Biden got into office, he shut down our Keystone pipeline, shut down all new oil and gas leases in America. Then he took the sanctions off.
We are producing right now more oil in this country than we ever have in the history of any country everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
On top of the fact that Biden is credited by oil traders, and this isn't something that I, am terribly excited about.
What did he just do on the East Coast?
Apparently, what Biden did during the past 4 years is he used the strategic oil reserve to drive down oil prices and essentially broke and it's filled back up, and he filled it back up, and he broke the negotiating power and the price setting power by oil countries across the world.
Really,
I mean, oil traders hail him for doing this, and frankly, I don't think it's that impressive. But let's talk about what Trump's policies are.
We only have a little bit of time left, but I was getting to that. So oil prices in 2021, Biden took all the sanctions off of the pipeline in Russia, and then the pipeline in Russia ran straight through Ukraine originally, and he knew that if he invaded Ukraine would destroy the pipeline, and his economic success would be destroyed in Russia.
In the entire video answered a direct question.
When the sanctions,
Biden or
Putin knew that would occur in Russia if the sanctions were taken off of that pipeline, and Biden took all the sanctions off of Nord Stream 2 in Russia like the second week he was in office, and then a year later Putin invades Ukraine. Sanctions happen all over the world, and inflation rises within 6 months, all the way up to 9%. Trump is going to do
I didn't go for this when I got my hair done, but I'm like,
and let us drill, and what that actually does for the
like
economy.
I say, we are producing more oil in this country than any country in the history of the world.
What executive order did Biden just sign to have to do with offshore drilling in the East Coast?
He stopped it.
Yeah. really dumb idea. We're about to begin a new.
Well, so you want to go beyond even the record-breaking thing?
Yes, I
Are
want to
you
become
aware
energy
of
independent.
climate?
And that lowers inflation.
We're going to
which
sell
makes
this
the economy
oil.
better.
We don't use the oil. We sell
we're
it.
gonna-
we sell
getting
it.
money in the
We
pockets of
sell
American
it.
citizens.
Dulce, get
We
the fuck
sell
out of
it.
here.
Well, how is that oil getting to the pocket of American citizens?
Because when you lower the prices of oil, that lowers the prices of
No,
all
I
products.
understand. I understand that the
you
inflationary
transport
effect of energy, but the fact of the matter is, they're just going to sell it.
Yeah,
They're
we're
not
gonna
like-
be-
they're
we're
not
gonna
gonna
be-
sell it.
yeah, so we're gonna
You
be-
want to produce even more oil than we are
Right,
now.
yes.
And you don't think climate change is going to impact? You don't believe in climate change?
Well, that's a whole nother discussion, but no.
Well, I mean, it's sort of the same discussion.
Yeah,
and that's
no,
the thing. Like,
I believe that climate
you can't
change.
separate a lot of the when you're talking to these Trumpies, they gotta realize, nigga, fuck you. They gotta realize that politics is a web, and a lot of the issues are connected to each other. So if you already don't believe in climate change, you probably aren't going to give a fuck about the damages and effects of oil production, because you would already know about the damages and effects of oil production.
There's obviously an element of climate change that is partially true, but lowering or
Which
raising,
part of it?
raising
Which
the man-made
element
raising
is true?
temperatures by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius in the next 150 years isn't necessarily a detriment to society. Human beings.
You don't think so?
No, human beings are very good at innovation, and we can build seawalls, and we can create carbon
What kind
technology.
of seawall are you going to build for Miami? What are you going to?
Did this nigga say we gonna build? Why is the solution always to build a fucking wall? What is this, Minecraft?
Do about
There's
like when
a
we
bunch of
don't when
research
we
on
get
it. I'm talking about the economy right now, which if we get back on topic.
All right, guys. Sorry.
You're done. You're done. You're
Time's up. I'll
done.
let you
Yeah, no
go.
problem.
You're done. Like niggas out here wearing ankle socks with their shoes, with their dress shoes. Goodbye. Sam will now choose a conservative to debate for 10 minutes on a claim of their choosing. Okay, if I knew I could have skipped to this is like the bonus round. Now, it has to be someone new. For the sake of the video, it has to be someone we have not seen already. I am putting my money on red. And it's that nigga right there in the silver shoes.
I choose Ben because he let me lecture him about Social Security. So.
Sam!
My claim is that abortion is immoral and should not be legal.
Yeah, I disagree because.
Oh man, not the abortion argument. I hate this argument so much. It's so easy to dismantle. He's either gonna go with the right to life argument, you know, all living beings have the right to life. But he'll probably also say that brown people should be killed in Gaza. If he doesn't make the right to life claim, I think he'll probably make the wrongness of killing claim, that it's just wrong to kill.
Largely because I think the primary rights that we have under.
But the fact of the matter is that you are placing. I'll let
society should belong to the person, and I don't believe a fetus is a person.
Okay. Okay, so that's
Another
very
argument
interesting.
of personhood,
You don't
too.
believe the fetus is a person. When do you think that it gains personhood, in your opinion?
The scientific community has agreed that is a fetus, or most abortions should not be conducted after the point of viability. Viability being when a fetus can survive outside of the womb. That is what most scientists agree on. If you ever see a woman or a person capable of pregnancy request to have an abortion, or the doctor's ordering an abortion and it happens to happen after the point of viability, it is most likely and most certainly for a very severe medical reason, either for the life of the mom or the life of the child. It is not, oopsie, condom broke, I'm just gonna clip it now after waiting 7 months. Like, that's not how that works.
Would you agree it's a human life, at least?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, yes, I think largely, I think that claim is largely like, it's not relevant to the way that I think about it. I think about it in terms of personhood. I mean, I think like, life exists all around us. And
not human. Well, I mean,
not
human life,
human
but
life.
not like there's
Right.
not human life in a tree, correct?
Right, correct.
So
And
it's human life.
it's human life.
But it's not a person?
It's not a person.
At which point does it gain personhood and gain the value of being a human?
Well, I think it becomes a person when it's born.
Why? So 5 seconds prior, it's not born yet, not person. 5 seconds after exits the birth canal, person. Is there a magical quality to the birth canal? What is that?
The person becomes separate from the
their
host
mother,
that
you
has
fucking
been
idiot.
that it's been growing inside.
Okay, so would you assign that to other human beings that are attached to things? Like, for instance, if I'm attached to a machine, am I a machine now? Am I part of that machine, or am I still a human life? I just need support in order to stay alive.
If you've never been born, and you're growing in, let's say, a test tube, for instance, then yes, I would argue you're not a person yet.
Okay, so then, but it's not really the disconnected part. It's the being born part.
I ever wonder,
being
that's another
born
good
means
argument. Like, I wonder
being
if ever these
disconnected
pro-life people would agree that in
from
vitro babies are
your
considered
mother.
persons.
Okay, so you're specifically aligning having the quality of being birthed as what makes someone a person.
Person within the context of our society and civilization.
So just in our society, you wouldn't say that.
And after this argument, ladies and gentlemen,
that's
I'm taking a
person. You'd
10-minute
say that
break.
We just decide that it's a person
Gonna go
because
for
it's
a
birth.
Yeah,
Winky wink walk.
rights we give to persons.
Marvel
Yeah.
Rivals.
Okay, so I guess that's an interesting kind of definition of what human life and specifically personhood
Well, no,
is.
I don't.
That you're
I'm
just-
conceding that it's human life, but that you're not a person until you're born, and you do not have the same rights that we would give. Look, we have rights about cruelty to animals, for instance, right? But they're not persons within the context
Well, yeah,
of
I'm
our
not saying
society.
that they are, but specifically, it seems like you're just kind of saying, oh, it's a person when it's born, but you're not actually providing any consistent reason for that. You're just saying it just is a person. How
I'm
can
saying that on some level, there's a certain amount of arbitrariness as to when we give rights. Like one could say, do you say it's at conception?
Sure, yeah.
So IVF, in other words, would have to be illegal under your principle because.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would agree with IVF in that case. It really depends on the particulars in that case, but I believe.
Well, what do you mean the particulars in that?
Well, so for instance, at conception, you would still be a human life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the fertilized egg attaches
So
to the uterine wall in
is
that
it
case,
human
right?
life for you or what?
It's human life, yeah.
Okay, so human life should be protected.
Yes.
Okay, so IVF.
Yeah, I would say that.
So IVF should be illegal under your rubric.
So he just said, I'm gonna run that back.
Reason for that. You're just saying it just is a person.
I'm saying that on some level, there's a certain amount of arbitrariness as to when we give rights. Like one could say, do you say it's at conception?
Sure, yeah.
So IVF, in other words, would have to be illegal under your principle because.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would agree with IVF in that case. It really depends on the particulars in that case, but I believe.
Well, what do you mean the particulars in that?
Well, so for instance, at conception, you would still be a human life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the fertilized egg attaches to the uterine wall.
Is it human life for you or what?
It's human life, yeah.
Okay, so human life should be protected.
Yes.
Okay, so IVF.
Yeah, I would say that.
So IVF should be illegal under your rubric.
No. So they're human lives, correct?
The IVF is when the egg and the sperm in that and then they're supplanted.
Yes.
Is it when is it human life?
As soon as it has unique human DNA, that's a human life.
Okay, so
it's a new human, correct?
Now in the IVF process, there's stuff that gets thrown out.
Yes.
You would consider that murder.
I'm not even defending IVF or going against it. I'm specifically saying abortion. That was my claim, right? I'm not going to argue IVF.
But isn't that abortion under your principle?
I would say if you get rid of human life after conception, I don't think that's moral. I'm not going to argue the IVF particulars because that's not what my claim was, right?
When we're talking about laws, right? Because you want to outlaw abortion.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. When we're talking about laws, it's not just morality when we form public policy around and create laws.
Not just, but it should be moral, correct?
Well, I mean, I think like your definition of what constitutes moral and mine are different. For instance, I would prefer, in a perfect world, not to have abortion on demand until, up until birth, right?
Sure.
In a perfect world. However, we know in practice that when you start to restrict things, like say, only in the threat of life to the woman, let's say, that's the only way we're going to allow abortions, right? When you start to have these exceptions, they're in practice, they don't work. Because when your life is in jeopardy and you come into a hospital, the doctor doesn't see a bulb that shows up above you and say, like, your life is in jeopardy. It's always a subjective assessment. And what does life in jeopardy, hold on, what does life in jeopardy mean? Does it mean a 30% chance of death? Does it mean a 50%, a 70%, or a 20%? That's why we now have women who are dying, because doctors are afraid to perform abortions on them. That's true.
Are you referencing, just because some doctors misread plain text doesn't mean that that it's all of a sudden that life is less valuable or more valuable?
No. It means that you are subjecting the woman to more risk, and it's impossible. These exceptions are all, they're canards.
No, Christian.
When you oppose a law, it is not just about morality, it's in practice.
Sure,
in practice,
I understand that.
You cannot do this without sacrificing women's lives because
what about
of your
the unborn
morality.
children, though? Because let's go back to your born
Unborn
thing.
children
so let's
are
say
not persons,
you have a 9-month.
and the mother has more rights, in my mind, than the unborn child.
Yeah, that's a claim that you can make. But so a 9-month birthed child, or just 9 months and just now born, it's a newborn baby. A 5-month could be emergency C-section and could be birthed, right? Let's say they don't do that. What's the difference between the arbitrary choice of taking that child out of the womb at 6 months or 5 months?
Why don't we take all children out of 5 months?
No, what I'm saying is that the personhood just because of birth runs into a problem where it starts to say,
all right, guys,
well,
I hate to do it, but I gotta do it. I'm sorry.
Please do it. This shit pissed me off. It was terrible.